Thank you everyone for being here. This is Chat with a Grad. We are very, very fortunate to be speaking with Alicia Faris. She is actually a nutrition consultant grad who has used that knowledge and all of the wonderful life experience that she has to go and start the Path for Panacea, which is her business and her culinary school for kids. So welcome, Alicia. Really great to have you.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here. Hey, everybody. Yay, Bauman.
I'm just gonna spotlight you. And Alicia is actually told us she's at work. So if you're hearing some of that chatter in the background, that's actually real students, right?
Yep. We've got a dozen preschoolers here today, learning the ins and outs. They're making 3 recipes today. I'll tell you about it a little bit, but yeah, they're making 3 recipes, but they're gonna go outside for a little bit, I think. So hopefully it's not too disruptive. But
well, thank you for taking this time. So we're all curious, right? We're students now, and we're thinking about what we're going to do with this holistic culinary education. And so learning about your path can be really helpful to students. So could you tell us a little bit about maybe how you even got on this path in the first place, and then some of the steps you took?
of course, yeah. So I just quick backstory. I'm from Florida originally. I live in the Bay Area in California now, and I grew up with like no knowledge of nutrition whatsoever. I was like very picky eater, just like eating Hot Pockets and SpaghettiOs, and like no connection to really like what I was eating and how it was making me feel. I moved to California in 2010. After finishing my undergrad, I did my undergrad in marketing at Florida State because I thought I wanted to go into pharmaceutical sales, which ended up I took a very different route from that. But that at the time I was like, yeah, I want to sell drugs. That sounds cool. They have those smart like bags. They go in the doctor's office with all those Post-its. Like I could definitely do that. That seems like a great career for me. So after graduating, I kind of, started looking into it a little bit more and was sort of like, I don't know, something doesn't feel right with this. I had been working at restaurants in Florida, in front of the house, back of the house, bartending, kind of just running the whole gauntlet. And then when I got to California, I just sort of started like going to farmers markets and just working at different kinds of restaurants where they were doing a lot of farm to table cuisine, learning about the Edible Schoolyard program, which Alice Waters started in Berkeley, that was about getting food education back into schools. And I was just kind of like, wow, I wish like I didn't have any connection with that as a young person. And like, I just kind of started making more connections about what I was eating and how I was feeling. I learned that like, 20 something, that I was lactose intolerant, and I had been just guzzling milk my whole life. And always feeling like pretty sick after I ate. And I was like, why am I always like, I don't like eating. I don't like any of this because I'm always feeling sick. And like, I never made the connection that it was what I was eating that was making me sick. So I started volunteering with an organization here called Quessa. Now they're called Foodwise. They work out of the San Francisco Ferry Building, and do a lot of kids programming and programming at farmers market, and just a lot of like community education. To work with kids, where kids would come on field trips and they'd go to the farmers market and we kind of show them around. So I was like learning alongside these kids at the same time. And I really felt like, wow, this is pretty cool work. And then through that, I got hired to run a culinary program for a kids summer camp, which was also kind of based out of the farmers market. It was in a under-resourced neighborhood. And just really giving kids access to these kinds of like produce and experience that they hadn't really had before. We took them to the farm and like we did like an overnight on a local farm out here. So I did that one summer and I was like, okay, wow, this is so cool. But I have no idea what I'm doing. So that's when I started looking into programs, and I was thinking, like, do I want to go to grad school? I found Bauman, and at the time it was an in-person program in Berkeley. So just a train ride from me from San Francisco. And it just seemed like such a great program because my goal was, I was already kind of starting in the field a little bit, but my goal was really the knowledge. So yeah, I went to Bowman and just was so amazed at how much I learned. As I'm sure you guys learning anything? I feel like I I could have just done that experience just for my own personal knowledge, even if I never did anything with it, and I still would do it 10 more times. Um, but yeah, I wanted to be able to, if I was going to teach kids, to also have an understanding of like, okay, well, I don't just want to teach them to make like cupcakes and hot dogs. Like I want to be able to teach them about nutrition and food and all these things that I didn't really have an understanding of. So um, then after Bowman, I started doing a little nutrition consulting. I did decide to do the nutrition consulting over the natural chef program. I kind of thought maybe I would end up doing both, but I did have some experience in the culinary world already. So I was like, I think I really want to dive into the nutrition information. And then I think I can probably apply that to the culinary skills that I have. Um, so that's what I did. And after that, um, I worked in the nonprofit for another few years. And also, like, I did some private nutrition consulting where I was working with families and clients that were teenagers. So I kind of knew where they were coming from a lot of the times because I had also been there myself, like not, being nervous about eating food and things like that. But I really just kind of found my passion in like working with uh, families of like, my kid is super picky and they won't eat anything. So learning a lot about disordered eating, learning about different kinds of like behavioral approaches that families could take to help their kids to be a little bit more open-minded to try new things. And
can,
I just
can I have you pause there? Because that is so interesting.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
can you give us like just one thing that, like a tip or something that with that skill set that you're talking about right there, like how do we get picky eaters to eat, right? That's a whole career.
Sure. Yeah. And it totally can be. And there's like a lot of interest in that, and a lot of parents that just struggle because, um, I think a lot of times it's like, well, I don't want my kid to be hungry, so I'm just going to give them the things that they are saying yes to. But one approach that I really like to take is I start off kind of before we even get in the kitchen and start doing anything is I start off by saying, like while we're here together, we're going to keep an open mind. And we're going to try to be brave. And it depends on the age of the kids. I work with kids as young as like 3 and 4. And then I also do it. What I do with Panacea is mostly teenagers and tweens. So like middle school and high school. So um, but the approach is really the same for both. The language is a little bit different, but for example, with the younger kids, like, I just kind of have them like, okay, like we're gonna keep an open mind, and I ask them about what does being brave look like. Um, Tell me about a time when you were brave to do something other than food related, like where you were afraid to go down a slide and then you decided to do it, and what was that experience like for you? So kind of helping them to understand that like learning to eat is like learning to do anything else, right? Like learning to ride a bike or being potty trained or learning to read, So I explain this to when I work with parents too, like, don't give up because it's hard, and our brains are programmed to just immediately want sweet, right? Like we want those like calories from fruit. We know that that's safe. Um, like things like bitter flavors. At first, we're programmed to not like those things, right? To be kind of afraid of them because they could be poisonous, they could be dangerous. But for you all at Bowman, like a lot of bitter things are really where a lot of nutrients are. So trying to kind of get to the point where we like those things. So So I start off with that. And then as we're cooking together, throughout, I always kind of suggest trying things as we go. Like, hey, we're going to cut up this thing, maybe it's a bell pepper, and we talk about it. We talk about what it looks like. We use a lot of sensory training, so we're going through all 5 of our senses, and I kind of have them, okay, like let's look at it, let's smell it. What does it taste like? We do a lot of mindful tasting practices, and then from there, I invite them to try it. And I kind of try to set up their expectations for like what they might experience when they try it if it's new to them. So, oh, okay, you've never tried this before. Maybe have you tried X, Y, or Z things that might be similar? Okay, no? Okay, so the bell pepper, like it's kind of crunchy. You might notice a crunchy texture. If it's a red bell pepper, it might be a little bit sweet. It's pretty wet. It has a lot of moisture in it. So usually they're like, okay, like that's a place where it's a really small bite. They're usually like, oh, okay, I'll try it. They try it. Sometimes they're like, okay, yeah, I'm into this. Sometimes they spit it out, and that's okay. So then I kind of come back with positive reinforcement of like, oh, well, thanks so much for being brave. I'm so glad you tried that. And I found that just that experience, they can have that experience 100 times with the same food. And at some point, they probably will start to like it. And even if they don't, that's okay. They're still getting to touch, they're getting to taste, they're getting to smell. And all of those things are helping them to kind of open and expand their palate.
That's wonderful. And so did you identify that as like being like a niche in the market where you were like, okay, there's a lot of people that want help with this? Was that like, how did you decide then to take what you were doing with the other organizations and to take it to your own business?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely did notice that. And I think part of it was also from my own experience and in being labeled like a picky eater. And I'm using the word picky, but in my practice, I don't. I just say like, you're still learning to eat, you're still learning to try new things. Because I think when kids get labeled that and their parents like, bring them to a cooking school or something like mine, right? And they show up and they immediately walk in and they're like, my kid is so picky. They're probably not going to eat anything that you make. I packed them this whole lunchbox full of snacks in case they get hungry. So that is like, makes it really hard for the kiddo to be open to trying new things. One, because they already know they have this lunchbox full of snacks that they already like. And two, like they're like, oh well, I'm picky. That's just they label themselves as that. So then they kind of come at like, I don't need to try things. It's just it's part of my personality. It's part of who I am. And so it makes it a lot harder. So I try to encourage parents in that way too. But yeah, that was something that I definitely found early on when I started my nutrition consulting practice. Was like, that was kind of my, I think if you're in nutrition consulting now, like as you kind of journey through before you graduate, it's kind of like, okay, well, what's your niche going to be? Like we all know, like knowing everything about nutrition and every different dietary concern and all of that it's a big world, right? You have to have a lot of knowledge. And so I think being already kind of in the kids culinary space just through volunteering, sort of put me in a place where I was working with kids and seeing the kinds of challenges that were coming up.
So very interesting. So you have a marketing background. I'm kind of recapping. You have this marketing background. You have a culinary background because you've worked in restaurants and kitchens. And now you've been volunteering with these organizations. You're really getting to work with kids in a way. And did you have kids at this time, or was this a new experience for you working with kids?
No, I had no experience working with kids. I didn't even like babysit as a young person. And I didn't know really what it was that drew me to working with kids. I think just reflecting on my own food journey through childhood, I was like feeling like this seems like a cool thing to do, and then like something that people deserve to have an experience and have like knowledge about. And I also kind of, I think when I graduated, I was like I had like one adult client that was just a regular non-family, non-child, just an adult. And I was kind of, working with them and just understanding like the complexities of what they were going through. And seeing that for their particular journey, a lot of it had started in childhood. A lot of it was they had a pretty restricted eating, and were not very open-minded to like try new things. And in the world of being a nutrition consultant, like you learn like it's a lot of times you have to kind of like talk to someone and be like, oh, okay, like you might need to change something about your diet, which is really hard for adults. Um, it can be totally altering what they need, what they normally eat, or what they're shouldn't be eating and things like that. And even just through my own journey and like, okay, I shouldn't be eating dairy anymore. I need to start cutting dairy out. And I had I also had candida when I was starting at Bauman. So I did like a candida cleanse, and I just learned for myself like how challenging it is to go through these different kinds of diets, and make these life changes. And through doing the candida cleanse for myself, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's pretty limited. Like you're basically eating protein and veggies, nothing fermented, not a lot of sauces, no sugar, no alcohol. So that was a pretty big change for me. And I did that for about 6 months. And what I learned was like going to restaurants was just not really an option for me anymore. Like I couldn't, it was really hard to go out to eat and kind of ask for what I needed and talk to the chefs and be like, hey, I had to go to I had a few restaurants that were probably Bauman grads that started them, that I could go to and be like, hey, this is, the way my diet right now, I need to eat these things. But I learned that I really had to be cooking for myself in order to be successful at this type of diet or this cleanse. And with my client also, they didn't cook really either. So I was like, wow, knowing how to cook is a really important skill for being able to feed yourself. So that's kind of another area where my business was born. I figured that teaching kids how to cook was probably a little easier and a little more fun than adults. Though I do teach adults to cook now too, but it's a little more experiential.
So was it an organic process for you to just like start having classes, or did you kind of sit down, make a business plan? Like, what was your process of getting from, okay, I'm seeing the needs that, people need to be able to cook. I want to work with kids. Like, did you like have that, or was it like an organic thing where you just started, I'm going to do this class, or somebody asked you to do a class? What was your path?
Sure. Well, so when I was still at Bauman, towards the end, we started developing what we're going to do when we graduate, right? We started talking about that. Do you want to work for a company, an organization? Do you want to start your own business or consulting practice? And at the time, I felt like, because I had done the nutrition consulting program, so I was like, well, I think nutrition consulting and working specifically with families and this kind of, helping kids have open minds about eating and learning to eat and all of that. That was my kind of initial plan. So I sort of sat down and wrote the business plan for that, made a logo, got a website, and all of that. So Path to Panacea, it's a little bit of a play on words too, because Panacea is sort of the cure-all, right? Which we know is not real. And for me, it's more of the path, right? It's the path to get there. Panacea also is like this like tiny little beach town where my family lives in Florida. So it seemed cute. And so anyway, so it started as Path to Panacea, which in retrospect, I'm like, as a kids cooking program, like people are always like, I don't understand your business name. But, I went through and kind of created the business for nutrition consulting. And then it kind of evolved over time. So as you see, like kind of my overall goal for the program. So I do nutrition consulting still as well. I do private classes, like family classes. and then summer camps and after school classes.
So
So
that's
this is
a
kind
a lot of different things. And so do you have help doing this, or do you have
yes. So
staff?
yes. So it's been a process over the years. It was just me for a long time, and when I was doing the summer camps, I just did kind of small camps at community centers where it'd be maybe 10 kids at a time, and we would it would pretty much just be me. But as it's grown over the years, now I have a couple of different locations, and and I have staff that helps to run the summer camps. One of the challenges that I have come to over the years of like hiring staff for my summer camps is that, and these also have not been updated for this year yet. We just finished all the summer camps at the end of August. But anyways, I was thinking about that today. I was like, oh, I need to update my website for today, but you can see what we've done this summer. But yeah, so every year I hire staff. I've hired a lot of Bauman grads actually. And we do camps at a couple different locations. And with that, because it's the bulk of the work that I have is in the summer, it's been really challenging because I hire these great people and we do the summer camps, and then I don't have like full-time work for them beyond the summer. Um, so something that we're working on now with my current team from this past summer, I had a really great team that helped me with the summer camps this summer and all of them. So I'm also I'm about to be a mom. I'm currently pregnant,
Oh,
so I'm also
congratulations.
starting a family. Yes, thank you. Which is probably why if it sounds like I'm out of breath. My lungs are like this big right now. Um, but my staff this summer was so great, and everyone was like, like we want to figure out how to do this year round. Like this, we want to stay with you. We want to do this work. It's really meaningful to us. Like what you've built here is really amazing. How do we figure out how to do it year round? So because we do have some after school programs, but they're super part time just because of the after school hours. So we actually have been meeting since the end of summer camp to talk about how we can kind of create something that's more year round, which is going to look like turning this into a nonprofit. So that's kind of an exciting new venture because right now it's just been a sole proprietorship. But the kind of next steps and plan here are to um, get our 501c3 and begin kind of making it a little bit more available for community partnerships and possibly working towards getting kind of like another space because we operate out of the East Bay in California, and finding kind of but we operate out of like community centers typically. So finding a way to kind of have a more year-round HQ outside of the community centers. So that's kind of been the exciting thing now. Everyone's like that I'm going on maternity leave and my team is like taking the torch and they're like, okay, we're going to get our plan for camp next summer. We're going to get all the paperwork and get everything moving on the nonprofit, which is really beautiful because never something I ran it I've been running it by myself for quite some time, and I've always wanted it to be more of a collaborative thing long term. So that's been really exciting to kind of have all these other great energies and ideas coming in to kind of figure out how we can do this more sustainably long term.
So can I just ask you, so the partnership. So what does that entail? So that's something I think we talk about in our business course here, where we're saying you need to, find a partnership. So how are those working for you? Like, are they the supplying like people in their organization that are coming to the classes? Do they have grants that they're helping to offset the costs for their members? Like, are they providing you space? Like, what is a partnership, and what are like the intricacies? How do you navigate that? Do you have contracts, or are you just kind of in verbal agreements? Like, what does that look like for you? I'm gonna stop
Sure.
my too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think depending on in the different kinds of settings that I've worked in, partnerships have looked a little bit different. One of the main partnerships that I have are like with local communities and in community centers. So with the community centers, we have kind of our contracts sort of work that like I provide classes at the community center, they provide a roof, they do a lot of the booking of the classes, so they send out marketing materials. We do, depending on the community center, it's like a 70-30 split. So my overhead is kind of the 30% that goes to the community center. So however much I charge for a class, we sort of split it that way. It's a really great way to kind of start doing programming, because if for some reason the class, you know, it doesn't fill up, it doesn't run, you do have the community center that's doing some of the marketing for you, and then I do some marketing on my end as well. I do a lot of word of mouth too. So usually once I've taught a class, like then I end up teaching more classes, because the kids just come and they really enjoy it. And I think you guys will find that too if you go into teaching, or how you kind of take your career. But that's a big thing for me. So with those partnerships with the community center, I also, or the thing that I think is really great about that model is that it's not like you're going straight into like, I need to rent a building. Like that's a lot of overhead. I need a full-time staff. I need all, you know, you can kind of start small. You can do a couple trial classes. You could put a few, like maybe you want to teach a workshop or a class. You can start with a couple of those things. If they don't run, they don't run, but you're not losing money, aside from your own time and energy that you put into planning it. But you're not like, you know, kind of hooked into this rental fee or this cost or anything like that. If they don't happen, you just don't do the class. And then if you want to try again next time, you change the topic or change the dates. You know, there's all kinds of different variables that go into things being successful, right? So it's a great model, I think, for approachability, for getting started. So that was where I kind of got started with my business, was through community centers. And then school partnerships is another big one, where those also were birthed out of the community center. So through doing the summer camps, I met, you know, just networking and get getting started. Through the summer camps, I just chat with parents, like chat with the people that come to your classes, to your workshop, like help kind of just understanding. And this comes from my marketing background too, like understanding like who the people are that signed up, like really focus on those people and what they want and what they're into and why they signed up for it. Through those kind of conversations and connections with different families that I had worked with, one of the parents was kind of like, oh, the sixth graders at the middle school are looking for a new field trip. Like, do you think a cooking field trip would be a cool thing for them? So then that kind of birthed this now with two of the local middle schools. I do field trips, like 3-hour day-long 3-hour field trips at the community center. So the school gets to use the community center for free. So I don't get charged for using the community center when the school comes. And then each school has 13, one has 13 and one has 15 middle school classes. So it's 30 days out of the year that I'm doing a field trip based on this connection, through that community center partnership and through the school partnership. And then once you kind of start building those, like one partnership leads to another, because I started doing it at the first school and we did like a sample where we just did like 2 classes came on the field trip, and then those were really successful. So the next year we did all the classes, which was 12. And then the next year they added more classes. So it's 13. And then that year the other middle school in the same community was like, oh, this is cool. Like, can we do this with our 6th graders? So then I added all those classes on. So that's another way that we're kind of adding on like year-round programming in addition to the summer camps.
And are you, is it like PTA funded? Are you approaching this? You said they've or kind of organically happened for you, but if somebody is just starting, like, would you suggest like they approach the PTAs at the schools or the school administrators, or like how is it happening for you?
It's the initial connection was through one of the teachers. But when I'm working, and at this point, I guess because I've been doing this a little bit, it's like I usually get approached by um, school organizers and things like that. But enrichment programs, if you're looking into working in schools, because that was something too, I think with Bauman, that I was sort of like, oh, if I want to work in schools, I'm not a registered dietitian. I'll never be able to do it. And I realized that was totally wrong. I just had to approach it in a different way. Um, so for enrichment programs, which is just fancy word for after school, right? It's like outside of school time classes. Those there's every school has like an enrichment program coordinator if they do any after school programs, so you can reach out directly to them and say, hey, I teach these kinds of classes, and would you be interested in having me as an after school provider at the school? So the enrichment providers are generally how I'm connecting with at least the after school programs. And then yeah, the the field trips, I think, you kind of get in anybody's ear at the school.
Right.
If you have any kind of connection um, at the school, even if you kind of show up and are like, hey, I want to volunteer here. Um, do you have any opportunities for volunteering? And that is another thing I definitely recommend, is to volunteer places that you're interested to work or interested to be connected, because that, I think, it's such a great way to just show up, be yourself, let them meet you. Like they're like, oh, this person's great. And then you're like, oh, also, I do this thing, you guys interested? So, Martina, did you have a question?
I did, yeah. So specifically working with schools, I know that there is a certain amount of, legal ramification working with, children. Is there anything that you have to do as far as like extra liability insurance, anything like that for working with children with schools?
Sure. I do have liability insurance. It's like $1 million policy. I mean, that sounds like a lot, but it's not anything that crazy. It's not even a whole lot different than what I just had for my regular nutrition consulting. Because even with nutrition consulting, you're kind of at a liability because you don't want to tell somebody the wrong thing and all that. So I do have a policy that whenever I'm working at a school, I list them as an additional insured. Every school does have a different kind of, some of them have different requirements, but most of them are pretty standard. Um, the thing that you do have to have if you're working with children is a live scan, fingerprinting, which costs about, I don't know, $80, depending on the level. There's like an FBI version, it's federal, that's 110 or something, and otherwise it's 85. So then if you have staff or instructors that are coming to the school, that's a requirement for working with children, is just being able to pass that background check, which is not like for misdemeanor, like marijuana charge from college. They're looking to see if you are on like a registered sex offender list, if you've ever child abuse. Like it's kind of bigger issue things that would obviously prevent you from working with children that they're checking for.
The
And
TB
then,
test, right? You have to have TB.
yep. And COVID has varied. At this point, not a lot of schools are requiring COVID, but there was a point when you had to have a COVID vaccination to teach in the schools. And yeah, TB, which the TB, you can get like a risk assessment now. So you don't have to do the full TB testing. You can usually, if you're at risk for TB, which they have a sort of a checklist of the things that would make you at risk. So typically I'm able to just do a risk assessment and don't have to do the actual TB test, but it varies from person to person. So yeah, TB, a live scan. There are a few schools that require you do like a mandated reporter training, which is a free training that you do online. It takes 2 to 3 hours. And that's just for anyone that is working with children. If it's how you understand and know how to report any kind of child abuse. So if a kid comes to you, if you're a person that's working with children, then you have an obligation to like take care of that child. If they come to you and say, oh, like someone's beating me at home, or they show up with bruises, or like kind of just gives you a little knowledge and education about what child abuse might look like and how to kind of address that, to help the child out. And so anyone that's working with kids, not all schools require that, but some of them do.
I think this is a good time to open up for other questions as well. So I'm going to unspotlight you so you can see everyone. And does anyone have a question for Alicia?
I mean, I do. Hi. First of all, thank you for sharing all that. It's so fascinating and interesting. Uh, Love it. I'm from Alabama, so close to Florida, and I live in Petaluma. I lived in San Francisco for 16 years. But I love what you're doing. I think it's so amazing, and I wish, like you said, like there's no education like that in schools. Growing up, you don't learn things like that. But what I am more curious is like this sounds. I hope this isn't too much to ask, but like, how do you charge schools for things? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if you're especially specifically if you're volunteering sometimes, but like how do you transition that into like a paid gig? But also I don't know how much money schools have. So like I mean, because there's so many things I've thought through about like things that I could do in schools and things like that. But I was just fascinated. Yeah, I'm just curious about the financial side of it. If that's not too personal, you don't have to share numbers,
No,
but
I'm happy to. Yeah, because I think that's, obviously we all need a life that's sustainable. That so in doing the work that that we do, figuring out how do we create that balance. So that's kind of come up in different kinds of ways. One, the primary thing that I do at schools is we do a pay per service model. So for the enrichment program, the families actually pay for the classes. So I say, we're going to do an after school cooking class. It's already built into their programs. So a lot of the schools that I work in, they have, they might have a cooking teacher, a Dungeons and Dragons teacher, a coding teacher, a dance teacher, and then after school, they have options to go to one of those special classes, or they can just do the kind of basic after school program. So their basic after school program may be free or built into their school cost or whatever. And then if they want to go to one of the special classes, then they would, they kind of pay for those classes. So then I charge on a per class basis.
I see.
So that,
Yeah,
so
that
that's
makes
kind of
sense.
more, yeah. So that's kind of the standard model.
Oh, Alicia, I think you muted yourself.
Thanks. For lower resource schools, a lot of what we do is because so far I haven't been a nonprofit, but I have worked in the nonprofit space. So in the nonprofit space, where I was working before, a lot of what we did was grants, fundraising, ways that we could directly connect some of, like, I'm in the Bay Area, so there's like the Googles of the world, and ways that we could kind of create a bridge for companies and for donors that wanted to specifically fund a class. So we would say, hey, we want to do this 16-week series at this particular school. It's going to cover this many kids. This is how much we need for groceries. And you kind of create, sort of a proposal for like teaching in that school.
Okay, yeah.
So then we will work directly with the school and then kind of help them find funding, because then the schools are nonprofit, right? So,
Right.
So then with those, we can help them get grants, help them get funding. So that's been kind of something that I found along the way, because I was like, I don't want to only do the pay per model. Personally, I want to be able to work in all different kinds of schools with lots of different kinds of kids. So, but yeah, different kinds of funding. In Oakland, we have a soda tax, which is they're charging people that buy sodas. That money is supposed to go towards kids' nutrition and food education, health education, things like that. So we've been able to secure some of that money. by going to town hall meetings and saying, hey, we want to do this thing. So, you know, just kind of looking to see what's out there, because there is availability, like at least in the kids cooking space, it's a cause that people are interested to support.
Right.
The challenging thing about that, I think, sometimes is doing long programs, because if a family can pay for cooking classes, they just keep paying for cooking classes, right? But if you're doing a grant, usually it's a certain amount of time, right? And then the grant runs out, and then you're like, okay, we got to figure out how to keep doing this, because you're spending all that time building relationships with the kids. So that's something that in kind of the progression that I'm taking towards turning my business into a nonprofit, is kind of in that world, because I want to be able to create longer programs that aren't just dependent on one outside grant, but that I could have more grants that kind of fund the business itself, to give me the ability to do that.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, great question. Yeah, and community center, it's the same. We charge the families for the community centers. The field trips are low cost, but we also offer scholarships. So we kind of work specifically, you know, for X number of students, 10 students enroll, we give 2 scholarships, like, and it kind of works like that. And, you know, I think I also just want it to be as equitable as possible in what I'm doing. So like, if I always like have, when I'm doing programming, with that is always kind of this, like, if you're interested in a scholarship, if you need financial assistance, just reach out. I don't like check it's an honor system. Right. I don't like check people's income statements, like things like that. I'm just like, you know, we all struggle from time to time. And if you're feeling like this is out of reach for you, I don't want it to be out of reach. So if you just, you know, send me, I have like a little simple form that just says, you don't even have to like talk to me directly. You can just fill out the form that says, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. Like, and then it kind of asks like, what would help you? Would 100% off, 50% off, 75% off, 25% off? And people are, you know, I find that people sometimes are like, just 25% off would be really helpful. Sometimes people need 100% off, you know, so I just kind of go through those, and I haven't ever really found that I wasn't able to provide those scholarships. So
great.
I haven't been in a situation where it's like I'm getting so inundated with scholarships. We did when I was working in the nonprofit space, we were doing a 1-for-1 model where we would have one child pay to come to camp, and that would fund a second child to come for no cost. So we tried to keep that at 50-50, but then we had so much interest from the local community that like we ended up doing like 80% scholarship to 20% paid, which wasn't super sustainable. So then we were kind of going to outside fundraising and grants to sort of supplement that. But it was still something that was like helpful to be able to kind of have that immediacy of like, okay, you're paid, you're free, you're paid, you're free. And the kids didn't know who was paid and who was free or anything like that. But it was a way to kind of just directly charge the people that were able to pay, and be able to give scholarships to those that couldn't.
Love it. Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions? I have a question. So, you know, in the kids cooking space, you mentioned before, there's a lot of things that are just kind of like baking, right? Let's make cupcakes. Let's make, you know, put things on skewers and call it cooking, right? And so what do you find to be your most successful classes? Number one, to get enrollment. But then what are those different than the classes that maybe you're getting grant money for? Like, so what are other people willing to pay for, and what are kids wanting to learn to cook?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. I mean, putting the word baking anywhere into a class immediately makes it more popular. But for me, I will sometimes put baking in the heading of the class, and then I'm like, we're baking. like today the kids made like a delicata squash bake with like a tahini sun butter, maple dressing and pomegranate, parsley. You know, so it's not always baking cakes and cupcakes and things like that, but just from like a marketing buzzword, yeah, baking does make people sign up for classes. More so with little kids. With the teens, I focus a lot on creative cooking because I found that like really what jazzes them. So we do a lot of just kind of like intuitive cooking and creative cooking. Like, okay, like let's look at this box of produce, right? Like, what can we make out of these things? We do a lot of competitions. The competitions are always really a hit. I think that the teens and the tweens really are into that. So we do, you know, the summer we would always do competitions on Friday. So we did like a dumpling competition where they all come up with their own dumplings, and it doesn't have to be like an Asian dumpling. Like some of them were making pierogies or whatever. Yeah, they do love bread and flour and gluten generally. I do also do camps where I do like a global kind of camp that is very allergen friendly. So we don't use gluten, we don't use dairy. And that one is, so anytime I have families reaching out like, hey, my kid's got all these allergies or sensitivities, I have an offering for them so that they don't have to kind of feel like, I think a lot of times when you have allergies, especially as kids, like they're scared to participate, right? Because maybe they had some traumatic experience where they ate this thing, or they're feeling othered a lot because they can't eat what everyone else is eating. So that's another kind of little niche, is doing camps that are allergen friendly, because that's really common. You know, we have, obviously there's tons. I don't really use nuts in any of my programs, which is unfortunate because I love nuts. And they, you know, nutrition wise, like you can get a lot out of them. And our camps are all pretty much vegetarian as well. We do occasionally offer, for the teen camps, we do like when they do their competitions or when they do their kind of creative cooking and they want to dream up a menu. We do offer meat, and we, you know, kind of come at like it from a sustainability angle too. Just like, okay, Monday through Thursday, we're eating veggies, but like, let's eat meat on Friday. And where does the meat come from? I taught a chicken butchering class once to the one of the camps, and like I think half the kids became vegetarians afterwards. They were like, some of them were very into it, and they were just like, ah, yeah, give me the knife, like, okay, you know. And some of the kids were just like, what is that? Like, chicken comes in nuggets, like, what are you doing, you know? So you know, I do try to teach like meat from a standpoint of like, if we don't have to have it every day, and the kids don't really miss it. But I think I went around your question a little bit, Carrie, but yeah, for the older kids, like the creativity stuff, and from a like a grant perspective, I've generally found that people are, you know, interested in helping kids eat healthier. So having kind of the nutrition background, I'm like, well, everything that we do is layered in this, right? Like, we're not making cupcakes and fruit on a stick. Like, we're doing things that are complex. We're teaching them how to have an open mind about food. We're teaching them how to like look at a CSA box. If you're not familiar with CSA, it's community supported agriculture. So it's like you get kind of a surprise box from the farm, and you're supporting the farm every week, and you go pick it up. But we have a relationships and partnerships with farms where we've taken the kids and taken a staff on retreats and done workshops and stuff out there, and the farmers like tell us like, yeah, it's hard to, the CSA is hard to maintain because people don't know what to do with a box of surprise produce. You know, if you can imagine, you get a box of produce, it's got eggplant and cabbage and Swiss chard and kale and some sweet potatoes and then some kind of pepper that you've never seen before. And like, if that's not what you're normally cooking, you're kind of like, what do I do with this box of stuff? You know, and it tends to, so people don't always want to do the CSA model, but it's so great for the farms because it gives them assurance of what they can, how much they can plant that year, how much vegetables they can sell. They don't have to get out there at the farmer's market and like be like yelling at people like, hey, come buy our produce, you know, like they already know that it's going somewhere. So we do classes like that where we kind of are like help the kids to be creative and learn what to do with lots of different things and how to kind of approach food in that sort of creative, intuitive space.
We just have a few minutes left, and we mentioned before all of the students joined us that maybe we could get a little peek behind the curtain to see what your place looks like. Oh, you muted again. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, they are at so right now we have a teen group that's here learning similar to what you guys are doing. They're kind of just like learning about like the business and what we do. And then we also have a group of preschoolers that have been here all day. So the preschoolers are eating now, but let me show you.
You might have to take off your background blur too on the camera. That's great. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so these are our friends here.
Oh, hello.
Can you guys say hi?
Hi. You have a big space. This is a large area.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
So they just made sun butter stuffed dates. What do you think of them?
Why did they came?
Oh, they're here. They're all going to college for nutrition. They're learning about food right now. So I was talking to them a little bit about food and nutrition.
So cute.
Oh, good. Yeah, so they made sun butter stuffed dates, and give me just a minute, Archer. And then they put they had options to put like coconut or seeds or graham cracker crust. It looks like they also put sprinkles on top. So no surprise there with 3 and 4-year-olds. So
well, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful to talk to you and to see what you're doing, and to hear about your future plans for the nonprofit. That's very exciting. I really, really appreciate everything you shared with us. I think I don't know, it got my mind kind of like, ooh, thinking about things to do in my community as well. I hope the rest of you are doing that too. Big round of applause for Alicia. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. You're on the path, you know. Just I think my parting words of wisdom are just look for those doors that open, you know, find the little things that kind of spark something in you that you're like, oh, okay, like this seems like a good route, or whether it's a personal journey that you've gone through that you feel knowledge about, that you feel called to. You know, I definitely didn't ever think I was going to be a teacher, and I, you know, fell into it somehow, and it's been really great. And working with kids, teaching kids and adults, it's been awesome. And I think coming from Bauman, like you're gonna just have this depth of knowledge that other people just don't have, you know, and being able to find a way to share that, whether that's through consulting, whether that's through cooking for people, or through some form of teaching or workshops. Just know that the knowledge that you have is vastly more than most of the population. So even if you think like you don't know everything, it's okay. You know, just start where you are and kind of go from there, and it'll all come out for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, everyone have a really great rest of your day. And
Thank you so much.
Keep us posted, Alicia.
Awesome, I will. Sure. Yeah, you guys, if you come out to